Betty, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Heidi. It's always good to see you.
Yeah, Betty, to start off, could you share with our viewers a bit about your background and why you decided to run for governor?
Of course, thank you. So I am a native of San Francisco, and I've had the pleasure of an honor of being in public service for almost 40 years. And my background is in public finance, and so very much an expert on taxes and budgets and investments. And I served for the last 8 years as the controller for the state of California. And as the CFO of the fifth largest economy, I saw really from my position what worked well in the economy in California, but also what didn't work well for Californians in the economy. And I believe that my background and experience really can be helpful in terms of leading the state as governor to be sure that California is adding up for all of Californians. It is a really challenging time to be in California because of the affordability crisis that we have here. And I believe that the experience that I've had, certainly keeping California's finances in order, will be very helpful being governor.
And you know, California continues to struggle with a severe homelessness crisis. In your
Yes.
view, what are the root causes of homelessness in California, and what specific strategies do you propose to address this persistent issue? And how will you ensure that these solutions are implemented effectively across different cities and counties?
Yes, no, it is. Homelessness used to be very much concentrated in our urban areas, but we see it really throughout California now. Really, the fundamental issue I need with respect to homelessness is a shortage of housing, and we can look at some of the other issues that people who are unsheltered have and are living with. But bottom line, it is a housing shortage. Now, when you go and look at who is unsheltered today, who is experiencing homelessness, it is a very, very complex and diverse community. We have people all the way from those who have been living with chronic mental illness and substance abuse, all the way to people who are working jobs but just can't afford to pay their rent. And so when we look at that, at least for me, it says to me that we can do some triage and really understand who we can help more readily. Obviously, those who are working and aren't able to pay rent, are there other supports that we can provide to them so that they are a little bit more less burdened with respect to being able to pay their rent? And then obviously, what we need to continue to do is increase our supply of housing throughout the state. People move from the coast inland to be able to afford housing, but we're also seeing housing prices go up inland in California as well. And if people can't afford to be in California, they will leave the state. And so this is something I'm very worried about with respect to losing so much talent and just experience that we need in our own workforce here in California. So a couple things I would do. One is with respect to homelessness, you have to look at how you're going to serve those who currently are not living in homes. And you also have to look at those who are vulnerable of losing their homes. And so really looking at both sides of the equation. I would be working with local governments to be sure that they continue to approve new housing development, those that can be integrated into their communities well. The state has to be a better partner with local governments when they site housing. So perhaps we can be more helpful in paying for infrastructure costs, economic development opportunities, how we attract small businesses. So this is really about how we build the communities that we want to see that will sustain families and communities for the future. The other thing I would do is look at how we can build housing more effectively and quickly. It takes a very long time to approve housing development, so we can streamline the approval processes at the state level and also at the local level, so that we see that housing production really come online much more quickly, so people aren't homeless for long periods of time. We also have a mental health provider shortage, and so for those who are homeless, who have mental illness and substance abuse problems, the people who would be caring for them, we have a shortage in those professions right now. So I would be looking at how we would work with our universities to be sure we are training just a new core of workers in those professions, so that people who have those chronic conditions are served much more effectively.
Betty, I know you just mentioned about shelters. Do you think shelters would actually resolve the issue? Apart from providing shelters, what comprehensive support services do you plan to integrate, in
No,
our homelessness
yes.
policy to, just address mental health, addiction, and reemployment?
Right. No, and I mentioned shelter just as a general term that I use for people who don't have a roof over their heads, basically. But no, shelters are a temporary solution. They are not meant to be long term. The really long term solution, and it's going to take a very high level of human touch to really serve the people who are homeless. So we have to partner with our counties who have the funding for a lot of the services that are going to be really benefiting our homeless population. And so those partnerships are important. We also need to be looking at the nonprofit organizations that work with this population, for a whole host of reasons, but they are the people closest to those who need help. And so we have to have a partnership with them so that we know we are reaching the right people. And then also we need to be sure that when we are serving these communities, that we do it in a way that is culturally appropriate and language appropriate, because the population of homeless people is quite diverse now.
Do you plan to adopt or modify the housing first model that has been discussed widely across many other states? And what would that look like under your governorship? And how will you involve local communities in the decision-making process to address homelessness, effectively in their areas?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I would. Housing first, this is really, I think, the philosophy and certainly the policy that should be in place. And the issue is also looking at not just it's an issue of funding, but it's also an issue of how we partner better with our local governments, because really a lot of the jurisdictions around housing resides with local governments. And for the state to have a healthy relationship with our local governments, we can partner with them with respect to not just the services that we just talked about, in terms of being sure that we are giving our counties the tools that they need to serve relative to the services that homeless people need, but also looking at how we are going to work with our cities when they site development to look at how where do they want to build the housing, what kinds of jobs do they think they can attract, what do the schools look like in their community. So instead of looking at the numbers of housing, really looking at the kinds of communities that we want to build for the future. We also have an aging population in California, so being sure that we are taking care of the needs of our older Californians as well, so that if they are living in cities, are they near public transit? Are they close to services? So all of those things that I hope we can really have a better vision with local governments about the types of communities we want to build.
Now, moving on to public safety, many Californians feel very unsafe in their communities. What are your
Yeah.
plans to improve, public safety, and how do you balance these with concerns about police reform and justice?
No, thank you. I don't think it's an either or question, frankly. We need a strong police force in every jurisdiction. This is something that I know as I've traveled the state, everyone is concerned about public safety. And everyone has the right to be safe in their own communities, in their own homes. And so what I would propose is really looking at, yes, having accountability for our law enforcement, but we need to fund them. We need to be sure they have a presence, but we also need to make community investments so that when we talk about crime, they usually are in areas where there are not enough opportunities, where the schools maybe aren't of quality, where there are just few, opportunities where people will resort to criminal activity. And so this is really a more holistic view about what we need to do to be sure that we can have the ability for people to feel safe, because we are making the investments in our communities and in our neighborhoods to be sure that crime is not the resort that people will face.
Can you elaborate on your plans for community policing? How do you see it improving relationships between law enforcement agencies and the communities they serve?
Well, first of all, I think because of the diversity here in California, being sure that we are really promoting diversity within law enforcement. We want to be sure that we have a very visible presence in law enforcement integrating with our neighborhoods and our communities. Where I have seen it work best is when we actually see our officers on the streets, when we see our officers involved with interacting with our small businesses, when we see our officers getting involved with our communities and being very much a part of what's happening with the schools. And so, just very integrated in their communities. It's what I remember growing up in San Francisco, being exposed to law enforcement and to police officers. And it's also about being sure that when we talk about community policing, it's also about what we are doing in terms of investing in the community. So, are there opportunities for our young people, after school? Are there opportunities for, jobs for youth? Are there opportunities for being sure that, when we talk about schools and the ability for young people to succeed and thrive, that these are schools that are, funded and that are fully staffed and that have all of the activities that really our young people are looking to be able to thrive.
And I'm sure a lot of voters are probably very curious about this. What are your views on gun control measures, and how will you balance, Second Amendment rights with public safety concerns?
No, absolutely. Guns are, it's in my mind, it's become much more of a public health issue, because it is one where, gun ownership, even within the Asian community, has actually gone up, since the pandemic. And I think everyone's vulnerability about wanting to feel safe has manifested itself in some ways for people into gun ownership as a way of doing that. But there are many people who own guns who don't have any business owning guns. They're not trained to, actually use the guns. And California has some of the strongest gun laws in the country, and yet we still have mass shootings here because guns are able to cross the border, from other jurisdictions. So this is a national issue that I know the current presidential administration has prioritized, but I don't believe that it is a conflict with Second Amendment. This is something that has every reason to be about how we keep our communities safe, and that there are strong measures for gun safety that I think can continue to be enhanced. And I know President Biden is working on that. California has done a lot to model what those laws could be, but we know that guns still come into California from other jurisdictions that still can cause harm.
Betty, we know California's economy is actually one of the largest and most diverse in the world.
Yes.
Yet it faces significant challenges like, income inequality and sector-specific, instability. And some economists argue that access to affordable childcare is actually essential for economic growth. Can you discuss how your administration plans to enhance childcare services in California and its, expected impact on the state's economy? And also the high cost of eldercare can, really strain, both say resources and personal finances impacting the broader economy. What strategies will you deploy to make elder care also more affordable and accessible?
No, thank you. This is something that is personal to me. I'm actually a part-time caregiver for my 101-year-old mother, and so this is going to be a personal burden for many Californians going forward. With respect to childcare, so much of what happened to childcare during the pandemic is such that we are in a rebuilding mode with respect to childcare in California. When we were asked to shelter at home, and yet there were people who still needed to be at work, the childcare was not there. This is an essential support for people to be able to go to work, to be able to participate in the workforce. And so there, I know, is national attention on what we can do with what we call the care sector within our economy to be sure that, these are workers who are, they are trained, they're professionally trained, they should be paid more, and they should have more reliability with respect to the hours that they work. And so all of those things will actually be able to attract hopefully more people to be able to do this work. With respect to elder care, and this is something that I think with respect to the economy generally, Californians are looking for, and that is, we want to know that the supports are there when we reach a time in our lives when we're under financial stress. It should never come down to where we have to quit our job to be able to take care of our loved one. And so there are many ways to deal with elder care, one of which is the same, really, as we talk about childcare. Professionalize the workforce. These are people who have skills, but let's recognize them and professionalize them by how much we pay them and value them. But at the same time, let's prepare for this because everyone's going to reach that point in their lives when they're going to have to make a decision about who's going to care for their elderly loved one. We can look at leave policies that can also be in place when people do need to take leave from work to be able to start the care process for their elderly loved ones. So looking at what those leave policies look like. We also need to look at just what are the other community supports that are there. We can actually build an economy around care so that caregivers also have services that are provided to them so that they can remain healthy and be able to care for their clients. And then when you look at how many seniors want to age in place, they want to stay in their homes to age, just how do we make their homes really prepared to where they're safe so that they can stay at home and be able to have a caregiver provide for them. So these are all things that I think we haven't thought about in the long term and comprehensively. But we also know that today, many households where caregivers live actually are living at or below poverty because of the wages that they're making. And so we have to do better. These are the people with whom we entrust our loved ones. And so I think it's a multi-step, comprehensive look at what we do with that particular part of the sector. And it is really people used to call it a work adjacent issue. It's actually a work requisite issue where your ability to work and my ability to work will depend on whether we can find care for our children and for our elderly loved ones.
And California right now is known for its high tax rates. What tax policies will you implement to relieve the burden on residents, while ensuring the state generates enough revenue? And can these tax reforms, stimulate economic growth, especially post-pandemic?
Right. I think the tax system in California is complex. Many people criticize it for how volatile it is. We have a budget deficit today because of how really progressive our tax system is. The more you make, the more we tax. That's true. And that's the kind of system you want. But at some point, the more that you apply taxes, it's the same people paying, just layer upon layer of taxes. And so what I would say before even looking at raising taxes is let's look at how efficient we really are with the dollars that we have. And so as controller, I can tell you, I uncovered over $7 billion over 8 years in improper spending. And so we have to look and be sure that we are rooting out waste before we look at increasing taxes. We also have to look at making sure that we are helping, sectors of the economy that we want to see grow. In my mind, I don't think we've helped small businesses enough. So many of our small businesses really did suffer during the pandemic, and there was assistance for them, but it was one-time assistance. They need more, ongoing assistance, and hopefully a tax structure that can be more friendly to them, so that when they continue to grow, they will want to remain here in California.
Residents are also burdened by high utility costs. What plans do you have to address this issue? Potentially including renewable energy incentives?
Well, this is an interesting issue, Ivy, because it's related to so many things. It's related to our insurance issue as well. Insurance costs are going up because of wildfires that we have here. Utilities are undergoing, just major, capital improvements to try to deal with, hardening their infrastructure against wildfires. And so, of course, those costs are passed on to the ratepayer. But I think, we have to accelerate our development of renewable energy so that we can have more choices. And we are going to need to transition to renewable energy for, climate purposes. And so I would hope to accelerate the development of renewables while at the same time trying to make that transition less onerous for consumers and being sure that we have the ability to have Californians be able to purchase insurance because we are not relying on the typical sources of energy that have been, some of which has been creating the additional insurance risk.
Education reform is another crucial topic for many voters. What changes or improvements do you plan to make in the education sector, and how will you ensure that these reforms benefit both students and teachers?
Well, I thank you. I think the reforms that I'm really focused on is how do we be sure that we have captivated the curiosity and the interests of every student, of every learner in California. And for that to happen, we have to make our curriculum much more relevant to them in terms of why they are studying math, why they are studying English arts, all of these things that may seem like they're requirements that don't have much relevance in their lives. But the earlier that we can connect our learners with the opportunities that are out in the workforce and other opportunities, I think that really has the promise of being able to have many more of our young people just be able to pursue the career paths that they can seek to help them achieve economic mobility. So that is really my first goal, is to just be sure that it is relevant for every learner in California. Secondly, we have really a wonderfully diverse state, and I believe that our diversity is our strength, but also being sure that when you look at the needs of our schools and in our classrooms, that that diversity is reflected with respect to the supports that all of our classrooms need to be sure that each of the students are getting the educational opportunity that we want to provide to them. And so relevance of the curriculum, but also then looking to be sure that we have all the supports from our teachers to our aides to just the rest of the school facility personnel.
You're the only Asian woman in this race. How does your candidacy impact Asian representation in politics? And how will you ensure that the cultural needs and contributions of the Chinese American community are recognized and integrated into state policies?
Yes. Now, thank you very much. This is going to be a historic election by all counts. We have many, many candidates that potentially could be historic firsts when they're elected. I would say for me, representation has always mattered for the Chinese American community. And we have progressed generationally now to where I'm so happy to see many more among us who are running for office at all levels of our government. But it makes a difference to be the executive of a state, and it makes a difference because there is the ability to have a view of just the entire state, all of its diverse communities. For me, the Asian American community, particularly the Chinese American community, has had a long history here in California. It helped build California, and it continues to help build California in so many of the economic sectors where we are represented. And so I think it is really about showcasing for the Chinese American community, for so many of our diverse communities, the contributions that we make to our economy every single day. We have people in tech, we have people in the services industry, we have just so many Chinese Americans that are represented that these are the same people in California who are going to be offering opportunities for our young people. And so I think there's a strong connection with being sure that our young people see role models and our young people see the potential of how they can also contribute in a similar way to our state and to our economy.
And with rising anti-Asian hate crimes, what specific actions will your administration take to protect the Asian American community and prosecute this, offenses effectively?
Yes, I've been very, very pleased to see our community really step up, and certainly the legislature funding, so much of the the responses to the anti-API hate. This is not going to be just a single point in time kind of issue. It really is about how do we galvanize our community to be smarter, to be stronger, and to know that when we see anything that is a grievance to our community at any level, that we all speak out. And we have a lot of support from other communities with respect to being the victims of hate and discrimination. And this is something that unfortunately has been the history of our country with our community, that when we can galvanize among ourselves and also stand in solidarity with so many other communities. And certainly I've been doing that as an individual, as an office holder, but also as a member of our community. This is where we're going to build our strength. And that is together we are just much stronger.
Well, before I let you go, do you have any final thoughts or messages you would like to share with our viewers as they consider their choices for governor?
Thank you, Heidi. It's been really a privilege to be in public service for almost 40 years. And I really believe that California is at a crossroads now where so many among us are questioning what their future is going to look like here because of the affordability crisis. And I am running to do the work. I'm running to roll up my sleeves and really begin to focus on the solutions. And I believe a lot of the solutions, we all know what they are. But it is about the leadership to put them in place and to be sure that we are working with partnership with our community so that the results really are going to be meaningful so that every Californian can see themselves in the vision for a better state.
Well, as California faces many challenges, it definitely needs leadership that understands and represents every Californian. Betty, Yee, Democratic candidate for California governor, we appreciate you taking the time to discuss your platforms with us and our viewers. We'll definitely keep following this election closely. Good luck on your campaign.
Thank you very much, Amy.